Joe, I'm really excited to have you. Like, I mean, I've been following for a while. I love the stuff you put out. I've got to say, the stuff you put out is so well put together as well. Like, I'm always looking at your images and just thinking, oh, it catches my eye. It's really great. But your stuff on Instagram is really where I follow you the most. Watched a few of your YouTube videos. But why don't you give maybe just a quick overview of who you are and what you're about? What is it that you're doing? Why are you doing it? And we can kind of go into that. But I know a lot of people listening probably won't be following you and won't have an idea of who you are coming into this. So that'd be great.
Well, thank you for having me here. I love everything that you're doing too. And it's always wonderful to find kind of kindred spirits, if you will, people that can understand what you are talking about because they have walked some of the things that you have walked too. So I am a pastor. I got a master's in ministry and theology a few years ago, and I moved to the United States. I'm Colombian. I moved to the United States to do an internship and to get my master's here after I graduated in Colombia. My intent was to do an internship at this church for 2 years and to get my master's. It was a 2-year program, and then go home. But I ended up meeting a lot of people that were moving to San Diego to start a new church. And in that group of people was also this tall white guy who ended up asking me to marry him. So we both decided to move to San Diego. We were in Las Vegas. We both decided to move to San Diego. We started dating. We got married. And then we dove right into church planting. This was an evangelical, non-denominational evangelical church. So our whole entire marriage, our whole entire relationship, everything had been, around planting this church, working for the church. And we started volunteering our time. And I started doing it full time, and my husband was still working so that we could pay our bills. And then we were able to move some things around. We didn't have debt, which was really helpful.
Sure. Yeah.
So then he quit, and we asked for friends and family to support us as, quote unquote, missionaries to San Diego. And we were able to work for the church, both of us, full time for a few years. And then the church started paying us a little bit. And we kept on doing that. So for 10 years, we worked for this church, getting more and more uncomfortable. The closer we got to leadership and the deeper we got into it, the more responsibilities we got, the more compromises we had to make.
Okay. Talk me through some of that. What did that look like for compromises that you were making that made you uncomfortable? And
money, for instance, we were given budgets, and we were supposed to give a budget for our ministries, the ministries that we were running. And there was a lot of expectation of this money going to marketing. There was a lot of expectation of this money going to website and things like that. And we didn't want to spend money that way. And we understood why they were asking that, but we also didn't want to do that. We wanted to help people. We wanted to, my main job was to run the school of ministry. So we had a school of ministry, people would get classes, and then those classes would be credited. So they, the idea was somebody graduates from high school and they want to get a few classes. They will be credited. They are not wasting their time. Yeah. But also they are going to be able to get a more strong foundation on what is it that they believe. Yeah. And I wanted to push some perhaps books and ideologies that were not mainstream evangelicalism to get people uncomfortable. Because if you're not uncomfortable with your faith and you're just swallowing everything you've been given, perhaps it's not your faith at all. It's just a faith that has been handed down to you. Well, our pastors didn't love that. So we started talking about why do we do communion at the main church? Why not empower small group leaders? My husband was kind of like an assistant pastor, and why not empower small group leaders to do communion at homes with small groups and do it more as a meal? That was not received well. Everything that we would say, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we actually empower people more instead of keep giving them just a little bit and keep them so deeply dependent on the church? Yeah,
absolutely.
And I mean, it was met with just absolutely not, absolutely not, absolutely not. Till eventually we just realized, both sides, realized this is absolutely not working anymore. The pastor, though, thought that we just needed new job descriptions. And so he changed the job descriptions and he gave us worst job descriptions. Like I was going to be in charge of marketing now. I was going to be the
Oh,
creative
wow.
pastor. Yeah.
Because so far we've
pastor.
established that you really, really enjoyed the marketing aspect, right?
I know. I don't think he was listening at all, you know? So he said, yeah, like maybe you're just bored and you can be just the creative pastor now and create ways in which people can come to the church. And I was like, no, I want people to go. I don't want people to come anymore.
Yeah.
And then my husband,
it's such a conflict of interest, right?
I know. Yes. And my husband he's like, you know, when people talk about teddy bears and like this person that you just hug and feel loved by them, that's my husband. He's 6'2", and he's just a loving person. I'm not. I don't like being touched. My husband, if I leave him for 5 minutes at the store, he's holding a stranger's baby. Like that's who he is. And so they moved him from working with small groups and working with youth and young adults, and they wanted him to do administrative, like more the administrative pastor kind of job. And he hates computers. He barely handles his phone. Like he was like, no, I'm going to be miserable. So we quit. So we quit. The pastor was shocked that we'd quit because we'd been working together for 10 years. We, you know, in our last will, the pastor was the person who would get our babies if we died. Like this is the kind, like we loved each other. And then we realized he kind of wanted our work, but if we didn't agree with him, then we weren't approved of anymore. Like we weren't friends anymore even, like, you know. So we quit. And then soon after we quit, I told my husband, like, we need to leave this church, because the messages were, he wasn't preaching about us, but he was preaching about us. He was, you know, a lot of passive aggressive communication, a lot of, guys, you can rest, you don't have to serve at all. But then he would preach about how people who aren't serving aren't doing really the will of God. And it's like, you're sending mixed messages. And then he started talking to people in the church saying that we were just bitter, that we were angry. He didn't give us the job we wanted. Started lying about us, not just with the people in the church, but also pastors we knew all around the area and in our kind of like group of friends. So we were like, we gotta go. We have to go. So we left, and, you know, I don't know. The question was what? So that was it.
I mean, that's a scary thing, right? Because, I mean, you've trained for ministry, you've worked ministry. Right. You are not trained to go into many other lines of work, right? In the grand scheme of things, and your experience base. I mean, working in ministry, it prepares you in an incredible way in lots of different areas, but generally speaking, you put that down on your resume, and not many people are going to go, oh, great. Yeah. Why don't you become a stockbroker? Or, you know, you are kind of screwed, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's how we felt. I mean, I remember I've been writing a lot of my experiences. And I remember the first thing I wrote about these was I was sitting on the stairs. We live in a 2-story home. And I was sitting on the stairs. My husband got home. I had a very small baby at the time. So I think I was dealing with a lot of, you know, emotions on all fronts. Sure. And I was bawling, and he just said, are you okay? And I was like, I'm not okay. I did all the things, you know, I went to I went to seminary. I did everything. Like I interned, I donated my time for years. I worked hard. I was working 80-hour weeks sometimes with babies, with kids. I said, I did all the things. I said yes every time. I served. I did everything I was asked to do. And I am here. We have no friends, no community, no relationships. Because remember, we moved here for this church. And when we left, we were not allowed to talk to anybody. And they were told we didn't want to talk to them. So they were trying to respect us by not talking to us. And we still were so indoctrinated that we said, okay, we'll honor our pastors by not talking to anybody. We would totally handle that differently now. So I sat there and I said, I have nothing. Like, I have nothing to show for my whole entire adult life. Nothing. If I show people my resume, what can I go into? Like I mean, I don't want to disparage any kind of job, but I would have to just start over. Yeah. And I am a woman in my 30s with 3 kids who can speak Hebrew. I can't speak Hebrew. I'm sorry. Can read Hebrew. What am I going to do with that? You know, like, it's useless. And at the same time, my whole belief system was being destroyed. You know, I was like, I don't even know if I want a job in ministry anymore. I don't know if I believe in all of this. I don't know if by getting a job in ministry, I'll become more oppressive, you know?
Yeah.
We ended up going to Turkey.
Wow.
Because when you are lost and you have no idea what to do, you just go to Turkey. We have an aunt in Turkey. We have an aunt in Turkey. She has been a missionary there for the last 30 years. So really, she's Turkish. And the work that they do there is very interesting and beautiful. And so we went to Turkey. We decided to be there for a month with our 3 very small children and not having a plan, or, you know, we just needed to get out. There was something about getting out.
Space to breathe.
So we went to Turkey, and first we see this church that is somewhat of an underground church. They literally meet underground a building, and they talk to us about how they engage with their Muslim neighbors, because this is a 99% Muslim country. And they are talking to us about how they are just good neighbors. Their intent is not so much to convert, but to love. And how love has proven that people want to be around them, you know? So a lot of people don't convert to Christianity, but they've built relationships with them, and they have these conversations with them. And if somebody's sick, these people in their own buildings just go and bring food and care. And I was thinking, gosh, and they said, and it's mutual. They care for us too. It's just this mutual thing. And then I have all these friends in Colombia who are mostly agnostic or atheist. And when I was telling them my story, like, we left and we're really heartbroken right now, and I'm just so lost, I don't know, they were showing up. I have a friend who's totally agnostic, and she kind of doesn't like church or religion much, but she said, well, what do you need? Do you need to start a church? I'll support you. I'll support you. I mean, people, you know, like, showing me love. And then all these Christian people I was ostracized, lied about. And I mean, things started getting harsher and harsher for me, because then everything that I was told was truly a lie from every possible front. You know, we love you so long as you agree with us, so long as you work 80 hours. I was getting paid $700 a month. So long as you work for $700 a month, you know? And my husband wasn't getting paid that much more. He was getting paid $2,400 a month. So we were both working. He was working, 60 to 80 hours. At the end, I was working more like 40 because I had the 2 kids and I was pregnant.
Yeah.
For nothing. And when we would say
in
things
San
like,
Diego
hey,
as well, right?
In San Diego, try to make San Diego with that and 3 kids. And when we said, hey, we didn't have health insurance. So if we got sick, we had to drive to Mexico to be able to pay less. And we said at one point, like, hey, we need a raise. And they said, well, we've been thinking about that. We noticed that you have more kids and you do a lot of work. So we were thinking that perhaps you should apply for state benefits because you qualify. So they knew we couldn't make ends, So the only reason, and I speak about privilege a lot, the only reason why we could do all of this is because my husband's family helped us, honestly, financially, and because we were super tight. And the house we live in is from this very old man who gave us a crazy rent because he just wants us to take care of the house and not deal with it at all. But it's all these things that added up, that at the moment the pastor was like, it's God, like, it's absolutely God gave you this family that could help you. God gave you this house where you could live. No, it's not God. They should have been paying us properly, that was the right thing. So we leave, and then my husband gets another job. I have a friend who left with us. She was the children's pastor, and she gets into this job, and her boss is talking to her about how are you doing? Are you, I want to make sure that you're compensated properly. I want to make sure that your time is compensated properly, because she was a social worker before she was a pastor, so she could go into that work back. And they are taking care of her, not just like paying her properly, but also there is vacation pay time, and there is also services for mental health care. And we are like, why in the world were we working for a church? Like, that's not. So more and more things were just kind of, and then I started studying Genesis. So I made a commitment to study Genesis, because we went to another church that didn't work out either.
Right.
And I just kept realizing, like, this is not a problem of this church. This is a problem of toxic theology, which happens to just be widespread,
Yeah. But so here's my question in that, like, because this is fascinating to me, is like, the problem, I agree, is a deep rooted systemic issue that is in a vast majority. I'm not all churches are terrible by any means, shape, or form.
Agree.
And even these churches that have these toxic elements in them can do great and wonderful and beautiful work. You know, I mean,
Absolutely.
you say that and recognize that you were in that. But you stayed in the system without the toxic systemic issues being an issue for you for so long, you know. And at some point there's, I mean, not overnight, but over a period of time, something shifts in you that goes, this isn't clicking anymore, there's something wrong. That after that you now find, actually, it's not even this church, I don't know about other churches as well. Like, there's some serious, so in a sense there's something wrong in all these different churches, but in another sense it's that there's something shifted within.
Yeah.
Like, can you identify the kind of key things within that you're like, oh, these were the things that was just like, it just would slap me in the face every time? Or
Yeah, incredibly. What like kind of opened my eyes to the systemic issues inside of the church was that I started doing anti-racist work, like anti-racism. And the reason I started doing that is because I started doing trauma healing. So I recognized that my relationship with my pastor, who was a really abusive relationship, was just me trauma bonding with him because of my relationship with my mom that was abusive. And my mom did the best she could with the tools she had. But now we've had great conversations about this. We both recognize that she was an abusive mom. And my relationship with her never healed. So instead of healing, what I did was run away, move to the States. And in my family, education is a big deal. So the best way for me to get her to let me go was to say, I have to go study there, you know, and I'll come back. And the only way and the only way to stay here was I fell in love and I'm marrying this guy. So everything, you know, looking back, I realized I made all of these decisions due to unhealed trauma, but not because this is what I wanted to do. And so because I'm unhealed, I go on, you know, my brain thinks that abuse is safe because it's all I've known. So I meet this pastor and he acts and he engages with me in similar ways than my mom, except he's a pastor. So he should be safe, right? And I'm not even aware that my mom was an abuser at this point. I am a 23-year-old and I have no idea. So trauma bonded with this pastor, and I continue to do things, you know, I continue to allow abuse. I continue to not set boundaries. I continue to be codependent. I continue to work hard to prove that I'm worth keeping around. All of these things that I realized about myself later on when when I left the church, I said, listen, I see the pattern. Pastors get hurt, they leave, they start a church, and they hurt people. I don't want to do that. So what does it look like to heal? So I started reading every possible book I can find on healing, on trauma. And I realized one of the things that, one of the reasons perhaps that I had moved to the United States was also internalized racism, the belief that this country is better. And this was a belief that was given to me, not a belief that I, you know, like just decided to have.
Sure.
And then
do you mean by like family or culture? Like
no,
culture. Yeah, okay.
I think it's culturally all over the world, you know, like white people are better. We are told the way of white people is better. The way in which they have family, the way in which they engage, the way in which they talk to one another, their businesses are better, business practices, their churches are better. And I realized, I mean, part of the reason I married my husband was also that belief, the belief that also white people are better looking. And I realized when I look at Black people, I don't find them attractive. And it's not because they aren't attractive, it's because I have been conditioned to believe they aren't. Because when I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't find myself attractive either. I didn't think I was beautiful because I was too dark. My hair was too curly. I was too short. Not all the things that I was told by white supremacy. So I started doing anti-racism work paired with my trauma work. And I realized that there is, more than anything, anti-indigenous like beliefs inside of me. So in Colombia, when somebody is being a jerk, if somebody cuts you off or if somebody says something, they call you an Indian. You're an Indian.
Wow.
Right? We don't even know, like we don't even realize these things.
Yeah.
But the idea that when I say savage, a lot of people all over the world are going to picture an Indian person, like an indigenous person.
Mm-hmm.
All of this is anti-indigenous rhetoric, and it's anti-indigenous biases that we've been given all around us. And then I start reading about the characteristics of white supremacy, because I want to know, I want to know what else has this seeped into, like the way that I was raised to believe that Christopher Columbus was so wonderful. We ought to be grateful he came, and we ought to be grateful Colombians got the colonizers we got, because now Catholicism, thank the Lord, we get to go to heaven. I mean, even those things in school, that's how we were taught to look at the colonizers. A lot of streets in Colombia, a lot of neighborhoods have names of colonizers. And it's not much different here in the States,
Yeah.
So I start doing all this work, and I start realizing how deeply it seeps into everything. I read the characteristics of white supremacy. Every single characteristic is also a characteristic of the church. So if I read them to you and I tell you to do, like I tell you I'm describing a church, you'd be like, yeah, you are. You absolutely are. An obsession with perfectionism. Everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be, an idolization of the written word. That's white supremacist culture. These paternalistic, patriarchy, basically, is white supremacy culture. These black and white binary thinking, good or wrong, sinful, not sinful, it's all over that. So I start reading all these things, and my mind is exploding. I'm being like, my God, the church has married white supremacy so much that we don't even know where one ends and the other one begins.
Yeah.
And then, I looked deeper into other systems of oppression, and I realized, the church has now been for hundreds of years. I would argue since the Roman Empire decided to use Christianity, to further its kingdom, to further the empire.
Yeah.
Christianity has been a weapon used by systems of oppression to continue to expand their oppression all over the world.
Yeah.
And so I realized I want to decolonize. I don't want this, because it's not only affecting my career at this point, it's affecting my marriage, it's affecting the way that in which I live in the world, it's affecting my parenting, it's affecting my relationships, it's affecting my life. So I either decolonize and heal. Healing means stripping of all of it.
Yeah.
Or I find a way to become an oppressor, whether I become an atheist or not, or whether I stay inside of Christianity or not. It kind of begins to be more about this is much bigger than Christianity. This is much bigger than my career, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. That's huge. That's a lot.
Yes.
There's a lot in there. I just had a guy on, a guy called Kevin Miller, who's a documentary filmmaker, and he just made a documentary called JESUSA. And it's all about the conflation of Christianity and Americanity. This is kind of like, where does one end and where does the other begin? And for a lot of people around the world, we look to America as this is Christianity, this is superpower, this is the best at this is the best at that, right? There's an element of that. However we're fed, through our TV, through culture, through magazines, whatever it is. And there is this element that we go, oh yeah, American Christianity, like that when you're standing outside of America, can look on that and go, oh, that's a different thing than my culture's Christianity. And we might choose to glorify that or demonize it. Do you need to grab that? It's okay if you do.
No, it's my husband. I think my kids just stole his phone.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
But there's this conflation, and I think it's easier to see when you're on the outside. And we sometimes do. We look at it and go, oh, wow. I know for me growing up in the church, I glorified American Christianity in some ways. And I ended up going to America and studying for 4 years, being there for 4 years, because I loved what was going on. But I do think for a lot of Americans, they live in the bubble. You don't see
absolutely.
that there's Christianity, and when you're sitting outside the bubble, you can look within American Christianity and go, oh, here's your Christian parts. Yeah, you're saying Jesus died and rose again, or yeah, you're saying whatever, like these little bits here and there. Love your enemy, turn the other cheek. Like, great, Christian, yes, wonderful. But here's your other part. You need to make sure you've got a gun on Sunday morning, right? You know, the churches that
Right.
you literally take a gun to the service to like celebrate having a gun. And I'm like, that bit's American. And I'm not saying that's wrong. You know, as a European, I have opinions on that, and most people will be able to guess what that is. But I'm not saying, you know, that's fine. That's American. That's, you know, that's your prerogative as an American to be an American. But
Right.
I don't think you can see the difference.
No, absolutely
and I think
not.
that's a silly extreme example. But I think when we're talking about something like systemic racisms and things like that, we can't see them. You know, I know for me, like I was woken up like 3 or 4 years ago to my implicit racisms, like just
Right.
having explained to me, yeah, Phil, no, you're not particularly explicitly racist. You know, maybe here or there you say something or do something that's really stupid and ignorant,
Right.
but actually that's not like that, you know, and you're working on. And actually, as long as you're working on that, that's just a good thing. Thank you, wonderful, great. And I can feel good about myself for doing that and going, yeah, I'm trying to become a better person or whatever. But the issue is these underlying things that we actually have no idea are going on, right? I mean, that's
absolutely.
And you can't judge people for that and say you're a terrible person because we don't know.
No.
But there is an education. And I think I just want to kind of clarify, I'm assuming this is when you're talking about this heart to decolonize the church, it's not expressly saying that the church is intentionally racist, although I am sure many well-meaning people with the best of intentions based on warped views or whatever are extremely explicitly racist within the church. I'd say the majority of people, it's more a systemic implicit racism that we're working with. Is that, would that be,
I think
would you agree with that observation?
I think that's true for everybody. So I have yet to meet someone that has really harmful ideologies and really harmful beliefs that is wanting to harm. You know, I think that what happens is because of trauma and white supremacy is just a response to trauma. You know, if we look back enough, if we look historically enough, it's, listen, we got screwed at one point. That's not going to happen ever again. So we are going to create this system where we ensure we're not screwed ever again. And that just it grows out of hand, because instead of healing again, you just find ways in which you're not going to get screwed again, which means you screw somebody else.
Yeah.
So what I've seen is, that's why I don't believe in binaries, in good or bad. What I've seen is they are just responses to trauma. So deeply racist people, the ones that you're like, how in the hell do you believe that?
Yeah.
If you look back enough, you just
they've got a story of some sort, right? I mean,
absolutely. Now, is that an excuse of their abuse? No, absolutely not. They need to be held accountable for their abuse. But punitive accountability is not going to change anything. That's why I don't believe in prisons, for instance, because that's punitive in nature. Yep. That's why I don't believe in punitive parenting, because that just re-traumatizes people. And then we're never going to get off these cycles of trauma where we change something. If we are able to help people see things through somebody else's eyes, and that includes me having to look through the eyes of the abuser too. You know?
Yeah,
that includes now, and I say that because I have the privilege of being able to say that. If you are the one that is being stepped on, sometimes you just don't have the bandwidth, and you don't have to have the bandwidth to deal with the abuser. You don't. But if you have privilege, you also have the ability to say, listen, it's not going to be good for me to just say, hey, you are being an absolute jerk here. I hate you and you're the worst. That's not helpful. It's just not helpful. Does that need to be said sometimes? Yes. Are people saying it wrong? Absolutely not. But nothing's going to change if we just stay there. Nothing is going to change. And that's where I speak about privilege. And I say, what is the privileges that you have that you're able to lay down in order to change these? Because see, for instance, I am married to a man. I am a cisgender woman. I speak English. I have a level of education. I have a lot of privilege in the world. Sure, I have oppression too. You know, I have identities that are oppressed, but I can't worry about those so much. I want to worry about the ones where I am privileged. That means that if somebody is homophobic, it's different for me to engage with them and have a conversation with them, because they are not oppressing me directly.
No.
They are not stepping on my own head. I can marry anywhere in the world. If I'm walking around holding hands with my husband, nobody is bothered by that. I don't have to deal. So that means that if somebody's being homophobic, it is almost my duty to say, hey, can we have a conversation about this? Does that mean that I am going to lose some privilege? Yes. Does that mean that people are going to be mad at me? Yes. But I am not going to be re-traumatized by this conversation.
Yeah.
So, and that happens with everything. That's why white men are the ones that should be having the most conversations and should be uplifting the voices of the most marginalized, because white cisgender heterosexual men are the ones that hold the most power in this world. Therefore, a lot of these conversations are not traumatizing for you. Now, should you have them with, you should be uplifting the voices of the ones marginalized and having the conversations with other white men and saying like, well, when I spoke with them, this is what I understood. Let me see if I can convey that with you so you stop being harmful. Yeah. Because if you're asking the marginalized to have these conversations and the marginalized to just understand the oppressor, you're literally asking them to just be re-traumatized and harmed over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we can understand it, So I don't believe that anybody is harmful because they want to be harmful. Yeah. I believe they are just responding to trauma. And I mean, I can even think of our leaders in the world that are narcissistic and respond horribly to things. I can see the trauma,
Yeah.
I can see the trauma. If I look at Trump, I can see a young boy that wants to impress his daddy, I can see it. And that's just a surface trauma. I don't know Trump, but you can see that in a lot of what he says. We're the biggest, I'm the best, I'm the most smartest, the guy in the whole world. I mean, he's compensating for feeling
like your president already. You don't need to prove anything, like, I mean, on some level, right? But yeah, right. Absolutely. But that's definitely some sort of sign of like, I need some more validation, please. Like, winning the votes of an entire country didn't do it for me,
Exactly. And I just see a young boy desperate for affirmation from parents. Yeah. Yeah. So, and that helps us, right? Be able to see beyond. So when I think of my pastors, the abusive behavior that they I mean, I can absolutely see the trauma that led to all of it. I can. And it helps me look at them with compassion. That doesn't mean I don't condemn what they did. It doesn't mean I excuse their abuse, because we all have the option to stop betraying ourselves for the traumatic events that we had to deal with. We all have the option. No, let me reframe that. Not all of us have the option. Healing is also a privilege.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But for those of us who do have the privilege of healing, who do have access to education, who do have access to the books and the time to be able to read them, who have access to therapists and all of these things, we're making the choice to continue to be in the trauma because it's scary. And so I see all of that and I acknowledge all of that. So I don't think they are bad. I don't think churches are bad. I think they are just America, even as a whole. I don't think America is bad. America was just responding to a ton of trauma in the worst possible way. Yeah. And
no, absolutely. I mean, you look at someone like a pastor, and you could probably say on the scale of different people that are bringing their trauma that elevates them to positions of power and all sorts of different things. Because that, unfortunately, it's a bit of a cycle, isn't it? On some level, that trauma can almost catapult some of those attributes that in our system of this world right now, generally speaking, people that are deeply traumatically driven will generally succeed very well.
I know they will.
In the different aspects that can look like, probably some of the people with the very best motives out of that, in the driven by trauma, needing to feel in control, feel powerful, feel whatever, but actually probably driven very much so by a desire to help people, to guide people, to do, most of these pastors are unaware, as you're saying, they genuinely are like, I just want to help people. Now they don't understand that their fear of being out of control, their fear of someone thinking they're wrong, their fear of losing people, which, in that worldview, when you think someone leaving your church, when your pastor's looking at you and your husband thinking, oh shit, they're going straight to hell. Right. And then they're thinking, and what if other people in our church, a lot of people in our church like these guys, what if they go with them? They're all going to hell. And I'm responsible for this. Leaders will be judged twice as hard, or, they got all this stuff bouncing around in their heads.
They have all those obvious ones. I want to protect you. I want to do all these things, all those that are also harmful. We are adults. Leave us alone.
Yeah, of course.
But they also have the ones that they want to admit to themselves, the hidden motivations that they want to admit to themselves. And the only reason I know that is because I had them. You know,
Yeah.
I stayed in the church because, and if I tell you the ones that sound honorable, is I wanted to help people. I wanted to change the church. I wanted to be an agent of transformation for the church and make it better.
Yeah.
Okay, well, those are cute and they are true. They were
Yeah.
true. They were just not the whole truth.
Yeah.
Because I also liked power. I
Mhm.
also liked being told that what I was doing was so great. I also liked people following me. I also liked people tweeting my messages. I also loved when I would teach a class and everybody would leave and be like, "Oh my gosh, Joe, that was amazing." I
Yeah.
loved all of that. And that was driven by my insecurities.
Mhm.
And I have to be honest about those too.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that pastors are very, very good at recognizing the good reasons, not
Yeah.
just pastors,
Everyone,
humans.
humans, right?
Yeah, right. Humans. We're all very, very good at recognizing the good reasons for which we do things, even controlling our children. Well, I control them because I want to protect them. Yeah, you also control them because you don't want to look bad against others, because you don't want people to judge
Mhm.
you for the way in which your child behaves. So until we are willing to also share, and listen, those are all fair motivation. They are just
Mhm.
truth. There is not good or bad. They're just, that's the truth. That's a fact. Now, are they healthy?
Yeah.
No, they aren't healthy.
Yeah.
So that's when my parenting, for instance, changed. I didn't want to continue to be motivated by how people were going to view me.
Mm.
I wanted to be motivated by what is the best, how can I give the best possible tools to my children? And that means sometimes I don't look like a good mom.
Yeah.
And I have to make peace with that, because
Yeah.
it's not about looking like a good mom anymore.
Mhm.
But I had to also admit first that it mattered that I looked like a good mom.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore. But I would have
Yeah.
never got into a place where it doesn't matter if I wouldn't have admitted that it did.
Mhm.
So that's why I know churches are not going to be healthier and safer. I don't care. I just want churches to be safe spaces. And they are never going to be safe until they are able to acknowledge why they are not safe.
Yeah.
Because they
Yeah.
hold on so tightly to, but we're doing good work.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, but you're also doing harmful one, like,
Yeah.
harmful work. So
This is, I deal with this so much, and I've dealt with this personally in my own experiences with going along to different churches. I've dealt with it when I've traveled and spoken different churches, and I deal with it online all the time. Obviously, you know
right,
this, right?
right,
But like anything you ever say that is quote unquote negative. Now, even that is a dualism in a sense, right? Because you can say the
right,
most negative thing in the world, it can be very positive for another person.
right.
But when you say something that is speaking poorly about the body of Christ or Christ's bride or all these, but we immediately go to these emotive language things to point out how terrible we are for pointing
Right.
out that, I don't know, the church has been complicit in genocide, infanticide, and rape in the
Right.
last few hundred years, right?
Right.
Not even that long ago.
Right.
And like, but we immediately go, oh, how can we? But you're missing out. We run a food bank every week, or it's like it's how can we immediately, you point out that the Catholic Church is systemically, horrifically,
Horrific.
brutally corrupt with all sorts of abuse scandals constantly. I mean, it's not even like it's not even as like. I don't even want to say it's not even, because even a small thing would be unforgivable, not unforgivable either. My language
I know what
forgives.
you mean.
It's
Yeah.
just, you're just so caught up in like, how is
It's
this
not
even
just this one
happening?
time.
I'm so frustrated, so angry,
Right.
so like caught up. And yet you go, yeah, but the Catholic Church does amazing stuff. Look how great it is. Look how many people are coming
Hospitals.
to
How many
get
hospitals has the church, the Catholic
hospitals,
Church started?
schools. I mean, it's amazing. But I think it's this inability to go, well, yeah, but this is just not black and white. It's not like you can be a good
Yeah.
thing or a bad thing. Pick. It's like,
Right.
are you kidding?
And none
that's
of
the same
us-
for you and me as well. Like,
Right.
we are not a good person or a bad person. We're a complex, messy person that has a wonderful desire to love our kids, but also has this slightly dark desire that wants our kids to be loved well, so that everyone looks at us and thinks, wow, what a loving mom and dad.
I know.
We have to admit that there's that
Duality.
The
Or not
famous,
even like the nuance.
yeah, it's complex. It's internal. I think the danger is that we look externally a lot of the time and realize the work initially has to happen internally. We have to start. And for me, that's why I talk about Christianity. Like, people go, well, why aren't you critiquing Islam? And I'm like, dude, if go for it, you do your thing. But like for me, I'm like, my world is Christian. This is my world. This is what belongs to me, and I'm going to turn around and deal with my stuff first.
Absolutely.
Like,
and that's what I find interesting too, because they tell us, be like Jesus. Well, did Jesus ever speak about anything but Judaism?
dude,
No.
when was like, how many times did he big up, like, oh, I love going along to a synagogue. Look at the great work the synagogues are doing, and look at the great work. He was critiquing the temple, the priest, the rabbi.
Because he knew,
he was going nuts.
Right, he knew what he was an expert on.
Mm-hmm.
He knew what he knew. He knew his experience. He wasn't raised as a Roman soldier. He was raised as a Jewish boy. Yeah. Therefore, that framed everything. So I'm not an expert on Islam. I can't speak about it. I've not read the Quran. I won't criticize it. Are people criticizing? Yeah, Muslims. That's their lane. They should be criticizing it. So we stay on our lane. Like, let us stay on our lane and speak about the things that we have to speak about. But one of the best ways that I've found, when people tell me, like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why are you speaking against the body of Christ? Who are we trying to protect? When you're trying to police what I'm saying, who are you trying to protect? And that's something that it's kind of like the question I open my mouth, I write, I post something, every time I build even a space, whether online or in real life, who would feel safe in this space? Who would feel comfortable reading my stuff? Because if it's the powerful, then I'm doing this wrong.
Yeah.
I want marginalized people to feel safe. I want those who have been harmed to feel safe. So is it negative towards the church? Yes, 100%. Yeah. But who feels safe? Those who have been hurt by the church. So I make a lot of, because I'm also trying to grow something here, like this is also my work. This is my life. So I make a lot of statements that are generalizations. Christianity doesn't help us mature, things like that. Christianity keeps us immature, which is not a lie, but it's obviously a generalization. Yeah. And people fight me when I make those generalizations. They say, you should say toxic Christianity. No, I shouldn't. If you want to say that, go ahead, but I shouldn't. Because what I want is for people that have been harmed by Christianity to feel safe. Yeah. That's it. So when they read that, they can say, she's safe. I can speak with her. Mm-hmm. And that's all I care about. Now, if the powerful feel unsafe in my presence, I kind of don't give a rat's ass. Yeah. Yeah. They have power. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't give a rat's ass. I don't, it is not my job to protect the powerful. The powerful are protected enough by the power. Yeah. My job is to build spaces where the marginalized feel safe. Now, if we go back to Jesus, that's exactly what he did. 100%. Time and time again, the powerful felt uncomfortable in his presence, but the marginalized felt seen, they felt safe, they felt protected, they felt covered. So that's the framework through which I do everything that I do. So, if you're asking me, well, people, this is very negative. To whom? Yeah. It is negative. To whom, though?
That question, like, that's a beautiful question to ask. In all our actions and all what we're doing, just asking that question, like, it's really, really profound. Yeah.
Right. Who's harmed by the things that I do or not do, say or not say, engage or not engage in? I am that annoying mom that sends messages to the teacher and the school and that is at school. My husband and I both volunteer a lot at our kids' school. And so we know everybody and we have nicknames for all the kids and all the things. And there was, like, I'm the mom that has the email. They were doing this project for Christmas and it was all around Christmas and it was a big Christmas shindig. And I'm the mom that sends the email, like, are you doing the same for Ramadan? How are you ensuring that the kids that are not Christian at all and parents who are not Christian are feeling seen and are feeling okay? And, like, are you ensuring? So I have to ask all those questions. And even they were doing another project about, like, hey, we want family history, like family trees. And I was like, okay, well, how are you ensuring that foster care kids, how are you ensuring that adopted kids, how are you ensuring that kids that have really bad history, families are safe by these projects? Or could we do a different project to talk about history that doesn't include family, So it's uncomfortable for me to ask those questions. It's uncomfortable to become that mom. Yeah. But who is, like, is my discomfort important, or he's protecting the most marginalized, the most important thing.
The people protecting the Pharisees and the Romans didn't get crucified, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when you speak out against the powerful for the sake of sticking your neck out for the marginalized, that doesn't tend to go well for your own self-preservation and comfort. Now, generally speaking, again, we're talking about privilege here, right? You are a relatively tick a lot of boxes on privilege, living in San Diego. I mean, like, generally speaking, you send an email to the school, they're probably going to go, "Ugh, this stupid mom," or whatever, and that's about as negative as it would get for you. You know what I mean? Like, at worst, they're going to be like, "Oh, not her again." That's probably about it, right? It's not like you're going to be like beheaded in Saudi or something. Like there's
or my kids are going to be kicked out of school.
Different scenarios. Or exactly, they're not allowed to do that, right? You know what I mean? So there's so much there, but it still is, generally speaking, that is surely the Christian. That ethos of who am I trying to protect? I love that, like, because that is what Jesus was doing again and again and again. The woman's thrown on the floor, and he could side in with everyone and go, "Yeah, you're right. That's really messed up that she's like sleeping with someone else. But by the way, where's the guy?" Yeah, they're right. These guys are really bad people, terrible people, on some level, based on our morality and our culture right now, based on our laws. These people are wrong. But instead, he goes, "Hold on. What about you guys? Any of you guys got some stuff?" Yeah, and so he does the uncomfortable, so he can try and protect the woman that is clearly being scapegoated here, right?
So how much of our privilege are we? And I mean, Jesus was very aware of his privilege. He was very aware that he was a rabbi. He was very aware that he was a man. He was very aware that he was educated. He was very aware of his privilege, and you can see his awareness of his privilege when he puts himself between. Every time, he puts himself between the powerful and the marginalized. And I think that that's the work that we have to do. Put ourselves between the powerful and the marginalized. Will that cost us? Yes, absolutely. And I think that when the Bible speaks about pick up your cross, that's what it's talking about. It'll cost you. And I mean, Jesus says that, my followers are going to be hated. That's how you'll know. That's how you'll know.
And that's the Jewish tradition as well, though, right? I mean, you look at the prophets, it didn't go well for most of the prophets, right? Jeremiah speaks out against Israel and says, "Guys, like, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. I don't even think Moses gave that rule. Like, this is wrong, this is wrong." And then you read a couple chapters later and he's literally been like lynched, and like he's been like cast out. And it's like, oh, dang, it did not go well for Jeremiah. But the prophets speak out against their tradition. They're the voice of God into their tradition, going, "Guys, we got some stuff right, but let's course correct a bit."
Right. And you don't see them speaking about any other nations, because that's not appropriate. That's not correct. But I see, and this is the marriage of Christianity with capitalism.
Yeah.
What we need to do is become the biggest, greatest, the most amazing. And for that, we need to compromise our integrity. And we need to accrue these things, and we need to be liked by everybody, and we have to become just this American version of Christianity, the liked by everyone, the dazzle, the lights. Who cares? Who cares? I was asked this when I was in getting my master's degree. I had a, this is the whole thing we're talking about. People are not all bad, not all good. So this teacher, he perhaps was one of the teachers that absolutely changed my view world the most. Like, he would challenge. He was the lead pastor of a church here in San Diego, in part of the city that's called City Heights, where a lot of marginalized people live. And he had a church right there. He was one of the people that would let undocumented immigrants stay in the church because then ICE can't come and get him. Things like that. That kind of church, super committed, super in the church. And he would ask all the time, because all the people taking classes with me were pastors. He says, if your church disappears from the community right now, would the church feel it? Would the church be better? Would the church be worse? Or would the community be better? Would the community be worse? Or would the community not even notice? Because if the community wouldn't notice, or would be better off, then you're not doing the work of the church. That's not what the church does. The church transforms the community so that the people in it are better. This man was then, like 4 years later, he had sexual harassment cases against him from church members, so you have that. Like, do I toss everything that he ever said to me and how he transformed me? No, I don't. Do I condemn his actions? Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, are you
Absolutely.
going to
But
rip the Psalms out your Bible because David slept with Bathsheba? Right? I mean, like, come
right,
on.
no, but I
We
will
have to
call
understand there's some nuance, but we have to say,
exactly.
David, not okay. Predatory behavior, not cool. You know, that's okay.
But doesn't toxic Christianity idolize this? Like
Yeah,
David was amazing. No, he was also a rapist, and we're gonna have to do with
yeah,
both. You know,
yeah.
just
Well, he
like
wasn't a rapist though, because Bathsheba clearly lured him in with her
with her
wily feminine
nakedness.
ways. Yeah, I mean, but this is it, right? This is the narrative. Like, it's funny. I love the local church that I often go along to here in my part of the world, but they were doing a Bible quiz. I think it was at Christmas or some big event, and we did a Bible quiz. And one of the questions was, who lured a biblical king to sleep with her by revealing herself to him through the window or something? And I was like, dude, like the way we're framing that
Yeah,
reveals whose side we're on here. Not the woman that
absolutely.
got raped and was
With the
forced into
least
ritual
amount of
and then had
power.
her husband killed. No. We're on the side of David. We're really mourning for David, even though in the story he's the bad guy still. You know, at no
Yeah.
point does like the prophet come along and go, right, Bathsheba, come on, what the hell?
I mean,
No,
David admits it himself
yeah,
at some
it's
point,
wild.
you know?
But our framework. So even how we reinterpret our narratives, our stories, everything,
Absolutely.
we reframe them that way.
And that's what happened with me on Genesis, for instance. I had been, because I had read the Bible over and over and over again, but it never looked different in a way. But then when I read it outside of the church, outside of everything, and I said, I'm going to read it slowly, one chapter a week, and I'm going to sit with this and read it. I wanted to read it as though I had never read it before, you know, as best as you can do that. I wanted to say, let's imagine that I've never read this. What would that look like for me? You know, what would it elicit? And I mean, a lot of, first, I get to, Genesis 1, 2, and 3 are my favorite chapters of the whole entire Bible. I love them and I read them often and I love them. But first, I was told God was angry with these two people because they ate, right? I was told the serpent was bad because he told them to eat. None of that is in the text. We added that because it serves penal substitutionary atonement theory.
Yeah.
But none of that is in there. And then we get to the flood, and I was told this was good. How in the hell do I reconcile a good God with a flood?
Mm-hmm.
How do I reconcile a man inside of a boat hearing the screams of people for their children and say, good.
Yeah.
I can't. And then you
It's
go
wild.
on and on and on and on and on. And I kept looking at things, you know, we were told that Ishmael was bad, and it's nowhere there. Nowhere. You know, we are told that all these women, that they had to be married to the patriarchs were women of God. Not there. At the opposite, some of them are idol worshippers.
Mm-hmm.
So I read all of these things and I go, wait, we were given a framework. We were given these stories. And we were told this is how they work. This is what they are. This is what they mean. This is what they mean to you. And then we just run with it. So when we read it again, because if they start doing that to you when you're 3 and 4 and 5, well, once you are an adult and read it, you already know the answers.
Yeah. Well, the children's Bible book doesn't have any people in the water, right? In the pictures.
No.
So the next time you pick it up and you start reading, you've already kind of deleted. You're just thinking of the boat floating in this endless sea.
And then the rainbow.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's a great story. Now you can have meat.
Beautiful.
Enjoy, you know?
Right. So we read all of these things believing that we already know, but we don't know. And the reality is that I would say 90% of Christians have not engaged with the Bible with a clear framework, you know, because of Christian hegemony. Christian stories are everywhere. Go to pretty much any country in the West and you'll see churches that depict them. You'll see stories that depict them. Much of the way in which we do life in the world has been framed because of Christianity in a certain way. You know, why do we marry the way that we marry? Why do we do the things that we do? Even speaking about vows, where is this idea of vows from? You know, and we realize, wow, Christian hegemony has seeped into all of society. And so we think that's normal. And that's white supremacy ideology. That's white supremacy. Because white supremacy is not about being white or not. It's about thinking that a way of life is superior than another way of life. That a way of doing things is the right way of doing things, is the proper way of doing things. So, of course, all of these people who are Christians coming to the Americas Indigenous people are doing things in ways that they don't understand and they were told are not proper because they're not their way. And they go, nope, all of this is wrong. You need to dress differently. Men don't have long hair. That's an abomination. Tattoos? Absolutely not. You know, just because they believe my way is the right way.
Yeah.
Why do you think your way is the right way? Well, God told me. Did he though? Well, no, he told my ancestors. Did he though? Or did they just write that he told them?
Yeah.
So then we need to reshape and reimagine. And I speak about this a lot. Like, if anything, right now that we're in the middle of a pandemic and the world is kind of noticing things don't work, could we reimagine again the world? Could we reimagine what heaven looks like? Could we reimagine what church looks like? Could we reimagine what community looks like outside of all of the, you know, chewed up food we've been given? Because that's what we've been given, baby food all the time. And I think that we're ready to start, you know, digesting solids as a society and say, hey, this isn't working, you know?
This is one of the things I'm quite excited about the pandemic. You know, talking about like, could we reimagine something like church? You see like the biggest voices of like opposition to like allowing people or telling people not to gather were like the freaking pastors going, no, we must have church. We must have church. And I understand their framework, the way they understand God, the way they understand spirituality does require come to a church because really that's where you meet God. That's the house of God, whatever. I mean, lots of incorrect or not incorrect, I don't want to say that, different beliefs that cause them to have that framework that I would strongly disagree with. But one of the things that I get excited about, and I think this is ultimately actually a deeper core fear, because there's that, and that might be some honorable elements, misguided but honorable, but it's actually the deeper other elements of the trauma they're not admitting, they're not exposing, which is, shit, if people don't go to church and they suddenly realize they can have a great relationship with God outside of it, they won't come back. Or how am I paying for my real problems of like, how am I paying for my kids' college now? Or am I putting food on the table or keeping the church open? Or and I'm not suggesting by any shape of the stretch of the imagination that everyone's going to stop going to church because we've shut down for a few months. I'm far too experienced in Christianity to know that that's likely to happen. But I do think there is a lot of room for people to suddenly realize, wow, what am I valuing? What do I think? What do I?
And I mean,
most of, and how do I connect with God?
Yes, and I think, look, people don't have a lot of time, right? That's what we complain about the most. I don't have time. I don't have time. People don't spend, like if you look at most families, they don't spend a lot of time, quality time with their children and with their spouse. They don't spend a lot of quality time. And on one of their days off, we're asking to spend half of that at a church and letting another person take care of the spiritual development of their children and also giving somebody else the power to take care of the spiritual development of ourselves. And then suddenly we have to do church at home and we have to spend time with our kids and we have to spend time because if parents want to do kids church, they are going to have to do it right now themselves, right? And have these conversations with kids themselves. And then perhaps people get to realize like, wait, we can do this. And I'd argue for a lot of parents, it's a little bit more beneficial, like to do that themselves. The spiritual development of our children is not something that you can outsource.
No.
I mean, it's too serious. It's too important to just outsource it. Now, do churches paint it as we're just partnering with one another to do this? Sure. Is it happening? No. Because time is limited. We had people in our church that when we were working for the church that would get to church at 5:30 because we had to do setup still and work a lot of things. And then 2 services later, they won't be leaving the church till 3 p.m. on one of their days off. Like, this is how you're using your day off.
And then you're back for an evening service in some places.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
And I'm thinking, if we really did care, if the church really did care about people's well-being, we would absolutely not be okay with that. And maybe this pandemic is allowing for people to realize, like, wait, what's best for me? Is it best for me to come here, mindlessly sit and hear messages, but not change really? Because church, I speak about coping mechanisms, and church for many people it's just a higher level coping, than alcohol or, workaholism or whatever. So it's realizing, like, I'm just coping with church. I just come here to check off the boxes, look like the right person, look like I'm doing work. but perhaps I could be doing actual work and literally
Mm-hmm.
healing my brain and healing my responses, all of these things, and truly being transformed.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping, I wrote about this, I'm hoping that we don't get out of this pandemic and just go back to
Straight
normal,
back
because
in.
normal isn't working.
No.
It's
Yeah.
not working. And I hope that churches are insightful enough now, because just like you said, I know they aren't, and it's not going to happen. But I'm hoping that for some of them,
Yeah.
at least, they are insightful enough to say, we could have been doing this differently. And that goes for everything, realizing that people could be working from home more. Like, what if people start working from home 3 days out of the week and not commuting and not leaving and not, all of these things, that we could reimagine the world in such ways that we could create a better place for everyone, realizing that we can live without buying luxuries for a long time. You're fine.
Seriously. Really,
we're totally fine.
Yeah.
Everybody's fine that Louis Vuitton closed down. Nobody's missing anything. We're all surviving fine. If anything, we're probably doing better. So how can we just sit down and say, hey, we can't go back to normal, because normal isn't actually working. Normal isn't good for literally anybody, because even the most powerful that are being benefited by these systems, to hold on to that power, you have to dehumanize all the people that are not being benefited. So you're literally becoming a worse human being. No, nobody's okay. We need to do better. So I'm hoping that happens.
Yeah, me too. No, they did a nationwide study in the UK, where I am, earlier this week, and they basically asked people, it's kind of a 7-point scale or whatever, but to what degree do you hope to personally go back to the same lifestyle that you had before the pandemic?
Yeah.
And only 7% said they wanted to go back.
Wow.
So it does make me think. I think that if change is going to happen, it's not going to happen at the top, because I don't think many pastors are looking forward to the journey, the painful and complex and scary and terrifying process that you've been through, and many other people have been through, of like, I don't want to redefine everything and turn my entire life upside down. But I think a lot of people are sitting there going, actually, how much do I enjoy getting up on Sunday morning, getting the kids just right, and doing this and this, or a lot of things that, how many times have my boss told me for the last 3 years, you can't work from home because it doesn't work. And now I've had to do it for 2 weeks and it worked just fine. Well, listen, Jerry, I'm never coming in again. Suck it up, because I get more work done at home. I spend more time with my family. I'm not sitting in a car for 2 hours every day listening to podcasts, which it's worse ways to spend the time, but I prefer to be with my family, or,
absolutely.
And so I think on the whole, people are looking within this time frame to be making changes. And I do think I have a lot of hope of individuals making that choice. I think, and I think honestly, that's generally speaking how systemic, these changes with the institution happen anyway, is generally speaking, it gets to the pain point that the church goes, oh crap, everyone's left. We need to think, should we teach something different? Or should we run our services slightly different? Or should we,
which is what happened with the Bible. Like, they wouldn't share the Bible with anybody. Then enough people were like, dude, stop with the elite. Like, it's elitist, And so they started sharing. And I've been talking about this on my Instagram, on having lives, and talking about how sometimes we switch. At first, no system of oppression was ever toppled over by the powerful. No. Never, ever. Not historically. It's never going to happen. Some of the powerful people don't even know how bad the harm is. They are not even aware, which is why I'm so cautious of all of these leaders worldwide that come from very privileged backgrounds. They don't even know, they have no idea. So there's that. And then I've been talking about how we've been so conditioned to ask for change, but within the constraints of the oppression.
Yeah.
So we change the system enough to where it feels a little bit better. It's not hurting me as bad, but it's eventually going to hurt me again, because I didn't truly change. So what we need is to heal collectively. What we need is to say, listen, are we all going to admit collectively that we care more about the way we look, that we buy the houses that we buy because we want to prove something to someone, that our worth is deeply tied to our purchase power? Are we going to admit collectively that there is a lot of insecurities and there is a lot of trauma that we've, endured together, and that has shaped the way in which we do life? Because if not, we're going to change the system just enough to where it feels a little better, but it truly isn't. And the example I give with that is, or one of the examples I give with that is, we move from Roman gladiators, which we all agree is totally wrong, to professional sports, which is not much different, really. You know, I mean, not many of these people get paid enough. Those who do are just very few and far between. Yep. Regardless, everybody leaves in their 30s with messed up bodies, with a lot of trauma.
NFL, like major brain injuries.
Major brain
injuries.
Yes.
It's horrific.
To where it's so bad that they end up committing suicide because they can't live like this anymore.
Yeah. Or going crazy and attacking people. I mean,
and exactly. And here we are. We're sit down, we pay to watch that, but we look back at gladiators and we go, oh, barbaric.
Yeah.
Is it different though? Is it much different?
But really. It boils down to the thing of, though, I really like watching football, right? I mean, I'm joking about it. I actually don't really care about football that much.
I know what you mean.
But that's really what it boils. I mean, the amount of things that boil down to. I mean, I say often, I am ethically a vegan, but you know what? God damn, do I love a steak. You know, and it really boils down to that. I love a steak, and I'm gonna feel even bad while I eat it, but man, does it taste good. And,
yes.
and we all have these elements of and that's a silly one in one sense. I don't want to belittle animal rights.
I know what you
mean.
These
things or the environment, but I'm just saying it's quite an obvious one. But it's also I'm just being silly of oh, I like the taste of that. But we do that in a lot of areas, right? So we're oh, I don't like this system of oppression, but it does benefit me to be in this area because the schools are better and I've got 3 kids. And and
I
want to change that anytime soon. And maybe after they get out of school, we could change that. Maybe if my grandkids don't live in this area.
And that's what I've had to grapple with, and that's also where I say the marginalized have to lead us out of here, because if it's the powerful leading us, then we'll continue to figure out ways. Because it's uncomfortable. It's just too uncomfortable. Yeah. But until we find the most marginalized communities in this earth, the most marginalized community, the people that are living with $1 a day, when we find them and we say, what would a good world look like? Yeah. How can we ensure that you all have all of your basic needs met? I was telling my husband, I couldn't sleep last night. I can't sleep a lot during this pandemic. I think my brain is, even though I don't feel anxiety, I don't feel like I'm anxious. My brain is like, no, we are. Yeah. So I can't sleep. So I was thinking, and I was like, what would it look like if we said, this is what we're going to do worldwide, you guys, nobody's going to buy any luxuries anymore. We are going to buy the things that we need. That's it. Just the things that we need. And I'm not talking about overriding self-care. That's not what I'm talking about. There's a difference between self-care and luxuries. But we're not going to buy any luxuries. And all the money that we would have spent in luxuries, we are instead going to pool together as a community, together, all 7 billion of us. And we're going to start moving all of that money to the most marginalized. And we're going to keep doing that until the most marginalized and everybody has access to education, good education, has a place to live in that is safe and clean. They have access to clean, drinkable water until they have food and nobody has to worry about eating 5 meals a day. Until everybody everybody has access to healthcare, until we ensure that everybody in this world, all 7 billion of us, have that. None of us get to spend a dime on luxuries. None of us. And this could happen. It's, the amount of money that is wasted, literally wasted on things that we don't need is outrageous. But what if instead of saying because I hear that at churches all the time, and I hear that from people also from self-care, self-help people, instead of spending $5 on Starbucks, just save it and then save enough so that you have a retirement fund. Okay, well, that's cute. People are dying of hunger though. And those $5 are more than are 5 times what people make in a week. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's meals for a week for a lot of people. Easily.
So I don't know that I should be thinking of retirement right now. But we want to be safe and comfortable. And we are all traumatized by poverty. We all have poverty trauma that comes from centuries and centuries and generational trauma. So we all are so afraid that we want to hoard wealth instead of realizing if we all pull in together, perhaps we all would be well. But it means that it's going to cost us some of the comfort and some of the safety that we want to hold on to so tightly.
Yeah. Certainly short term. I agree. I agree massively. I think to play devil's advocate, I don't know if humanity's evolved enough yet. I really
No,
I think,
absolutely not.
I think that we're in this weird position. Because I always try and be even-handed with this stuff as well. Because I'm European, right? So I'm like crazy. I mean, even for like, the most wild liberal American, I probably seem like a crazy like leftist or whatever, So I mean, it's again coming out of those bubbles and realizing, oh
Right.
wow, yeah, like we have very different definitions of political, religious, all these different things.
Absolutely.
So I'm probably extremely kind of like off the deep end anyway for most Americans. So I agree with that. Like I mean, we look at America and go, are you kidding me? You guys are like worse than some third world countries that have healthcare by default. Like, I'm like,
So
what is happening? So, and you pay more than any country that has free medical care. You pay more to not get it. And I'm like, what? Per person? Like, it's just, yeah. Anyway, so like, I look at some of that and I'm like, yeah, of course, duh. But I think it's really important that we look at how much we've shifted, So I look at like things like, good God, like we are so racist still. And then I go, we were lynching people 60, 70 years ago. And in some ways we still are lynching people, and, well, we had slavery 200 years ago. And then, actually slavery 200 years ago was a big improvement on like what it was just 500-600 years. And so like, there's this, the rate at which we're moving forwards, the conversations we're having, are extraordinary at how much we're having them. And so I think there's a lot to be said that it's very positive at the momentum. The fact that healthcare as a norm is bizarrely looked on upon in like the couple of countries that don't have it, Ireland, America, Western wealthy countries.
Yeah.
We're like, what's happening there? Like, that's weird. That's incredible. That's a default now. Everyone's like, yeah, well, duh. If you're sick, that's a human right. You should just get that sorted straight away for free. Duh. Like, what a bizarre notion. Like, that's an incredible achievement. The thing that I wonder, right? So we've got these massive psychological jumps, things that go, oh yeah, well, obviously that person is just as valuable as me. However, I don't think physiologically we've caught up. If you look at the rate of change physiologically of like how we've evolved to see other people, to organize, to even the way, one of the things is, why are we all obese right now? Is because we still have the same physiological makeup that we've had for the last 100,000 years, which is, oh my God, sugar, that's really high in energy. I won't have to eat for ages if I have that. So it's great because I might not see food for another day. And so we just eat a crap ton of fruit. Well, now we just walk into the store and go, Twizzlers, like, or whatever. And we just eat like sugar for 4 hours straight and then go, why do I do that? And it's like, well, it's physiologically wired into me to go, ooh, energy, I'll just fill up.
Right.
And so we've got these things. Why are we racist? That's actually ingrained in us. So we are ingrained to go, you look different. You are from a different tribe. You are a threat. And my tribe that looks like me are safe. And historically, that's very accurate. Like, any anthropologist, any archaeologist doing some digging goes, whoa, these bones, like, I think it's like, is it 7? If you go back, I think it's up to about 20 years. In fact, I think it's 20,000 years. But I think up until even about like 5,000 years ago, they estimate about between 60 and 80% of humans that died from violence.
Right. Yes, I read that.
That's astonishing.
Did you read Sapiens?
Astonishing.
The book,
yeah. Okay.
Sapiens?
Yeah. Maybe it was in Sapiens.
Yes.
I read it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I mean, we look at things and be like, wow, there's a lot less than 80% of people dying from violence. So we can go, geez, why are we still talking about like things like, whatever, why is like gun crime so high? Why police brutality? Why are like kids beating up each other in the inner city? But actually we go, we're a lot better than 80%. So we're moving, but I think on some fundamental level, I don't know if we're there, that we are able to fight against that core thing within us that goes, I need to gather, I need to protect, my family are more important. Like that dark side within us that goes, yeah, I do love everyone and I will give some money to that charity and look after that. And I do feel bad when I see a picture of a starving African on TV, or, and I'll maybe even do the £3 a month pledge or $3 a month, whatever. But I'd let that kid die if my kid was going to die instead.
Right. And that's where
that's hard ingrained. Like, how do we, I just don't know how we move past that, other than
that's where
intentionality, education.
Exactly. And that's where we have to, and that's where I see actually the power that the church could have, the power of challenging implicit biases, the power of saying, I know that we've been told, because see, what Jesus was inviting people to was a reframing, a reshaping of society, a reimagining of the world. I believe that when he spoke about the kingdom of heaven is at hand, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, I don't think we were talking about an afterlife. I think we were talking about it's at hand. It's the ability to bring this about is within us. And that's where education takes a huge, and we do so much better with education as it is, like I look at my daughter's schools is absolutely excellent. And I know that's not the experience of all children in the world.
Is this just because you keep phoning them? I
don't know. No, I'm kidding. No, they really are excellent. One of the teachers actually is the daughter of a big progressive, I don't want to name him because I don't want to blast her either, but he's a big progressive name in the Christian world, and that's the daughter. And she wrote a book about children too, and how to teach children to love well and be agents of transformation in their communities. And so even like a lot of the writing prompts throughout this whole pandemic have been, how can you be an agent of transformation? How can we make our community better? How can you make our home life better in the middle of all this uncertainty? And they do a lot of like affirmations, like this is uncomfortable, it's okay to be disappointed, this is all of these things that I really appreciate. So already we are doing a much better job, absolutely. I think that it's just we need to continue to do it, and that when people ask me like how do I start within, start asking what are the implicit biases that I have. If I ask a person what is your childhood trauma and they just tell me my childhood was awesome. I already know, like, okay, well, you've done no work, because all of us have childhood trauma. All of us. If I say, what are your insecurities? And they go like, I'm not a very insecure person. Okay, well, you're not a safe person for me because you are not aware. You're not self-aware. And self-awareness is step one. I can tell you all my insecurities. I can tell you I go into work mode. I think my worth is in my work. So it's hard for me to not put work down, because I feel validated when my work is moving.
Yeah. I have no idea what you're talking about at midnight.
I know.
The weekend.
I was doing math and I was like, gosh, it's going to be late for him. But I know my insecurity. It's hard for me to ask people to pay me for my work. As a woman in the world, as a woman of color in America, I feel like it's just inappropriate for me to ask for money. So I have an alter ego. He's a white man. He's the one that asks for money. Because I have to play mind games with myself. His name is Atticus. I have to play mind games with myself to override the conditioning that I have been given. But I'm aware of those things, like I'm aware that it's hard. I'm aware that when people ask me to do something for them, it's super extremely hard for me to say no. And I have to know why. I love to be needed. I love to be needed. I was the oldest child of divorced parents who they relied a lot on me to be able to help with my sister. And I thought, well, if they always need me to help with my sister, they'll always need me. And that's where I felt loved the most. So I'm aware of all of these things. How do we start? A self-awareness so that we stop living on these conditionings, on our subconscious mind, I have to protect the wealth because I don't know if we're going to be able to have money tomorrow. I have to protect my children instead of, you have to just equip them and give them all the tools because they will have to face reality one day. So we have to just stop living in our subconscious mind, which is what I call the autopilot. That it's comfortable, but it doesn't lead us to liberation. It doesn't lead us to heaven. It just leads us to comfort. And comfort is not heaven. I don't want that.
Did you go through therapy for any of this? Because it fascinates me because I am a weird person, like really weird. I'm very aware. I've got a whole bunch of different elements. I've got some different, my own traumas, my own insecurities. I've got some physical elements going on. I've got a condition called alexithymia, which means I don't know what my emotions are. So if I feel angry right now, I don't know. And it's only after looking back going, oh, I was getting really like animated and I was yelling, I was probably angry, or I don't know if I'm sad. I can be crying and not actually know the emotion that's happening cognitively. So it's a fascinating condition, and some of that can come from trauma and some of stuff, but actually a lot of it is physically has been found as well. And I don't know what my makeup of that is. I actually imagine a lot more of it is trauma than actually physical, but and I work on different things that happen. So I've got an interesting makeup when it comes to stuff like
Yeah.
that, because I am analytical, intellectual. I look at things. I don't get too caught up in my emotions because I don't really know I've got emotions. And often by the time I realize I was emotional, I've kind of processed it and I'm through it, which is really nice sometimes, especially in our line of work, you know, when you deal with certain people and you're just hearing things and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like crazy. I'm really glad I don't really have any idea what emotions are coming up for me right now.
Yeah.
But like, so I'm really intentional with stuff like that. And so something like that, I'm like, I've been spending the last like 7-8 years, probably a bit longer, really working hard on trying to do some deep diving, you know, trying to figure out what emotion I feel right now, what's going on in my body, what's happening. I don't feel many of us, and I don't know if before, like maybe 8-9 years ago, I wasn't massively intentional about doing deep dives into myself. It took me going through a divorce, realizing, whoa, I've got some shit in me. It's not just the person in front of me. They've got their own stuff, but I've got stuff I need to work on. And it took me to have that pain point to go, okay, let's look in. I don't know how much most people do that work. I don't, because, you know, we talk about what's your insecurity. I'm not insecure, you know, or what was your trauma? I didn't have trauma. And it's not that they don't have it. Obviously, most people have something somewhere, but it is, they genuinely are being truthful most of the time. I think a lot of time we're just scared to say, but actually, if you've done enough work to actually figure it out, you're probably fairly open and a bit more vulnerable. So people don't even know that work needs to be done, or if they do know, they go like, where do I even begin? Like, what was that for you? Was that something that you were intentional about, or is that something you kind of stumbled into? You mentioned it largely to do with the process of when you were coming out of church, realizing a lot of white supremacy or implicit racism, things like that. Like, how did that work out for you?
I think pain always, pain, you can do two things with pain: double down on your trauma, or let it lead you to healing, you know? So that's what some people call like leaning into the pain, just leaning. What is this pain communicating to me? Just like physical pain. I mean, you can do two things: ignore it and then you get gangrene, or pay attention to it and take care of it and really heal, you know? So I think I had experienced a lot of pain through my life and through the years, like all of us, you know, pain is life. And then I didn't have the tools to lean in to my pain. I just didn't have the tools. And then as I continued, that's why I say healing is a privilege, because it requires tools. So then after I left the church, I was so determined. I am also very analytical and things have to make sense. And, you know, math makes sense. 2 + 2 = 4. I can work with things like that. So I started reading a lot. And then I started finding people that were speaking things that were transforming my worldview. And so I started paying them on Patreon. That's where my tithes started going. So I was tithing to people on Patreon that were helping me really. And then I found a woman that, well, I found several women. I was determined to also let the marginalized lead me. So I didn't want to find white men speaking about things. I had heard my whole entire life from white men. I think I know what white men have to say. Then I started
this is where that has got me so far.
So I started listening to some white women too, and I found a lot of the, you know, positivity, like just think positively. And I realized none of them are real. Like none of them can speak to me about being a woman of color in America with an accent. The fact that I go to the park and I hear sometimes women, like I heard one woman particularly screamed, you know, I'm going to call ICE on you. And that's painful because it's weaponizing things. I said, go ahead. She could. I have documentation. But just hearing all these things and realizing my whole life, a lot of the things that had been oppressing me and a lot of the things that were painful to me and I just didn't have the language for, were because I was a marginalized community in the world as a woman and as a woman of color, and now as a woman of color in America whose first language is not English. And so I said, okay, I want marginalized communities to lead me. So I found some indigenous people, and I found a Mexican woman that is a therapist, and she's decolonizing therapy and decolonizing psychology. And then I found 2 Black women, and then a trans man, a trans Black man, and I started paying them. Honestly, that's what I did. I started paying them on Patreon to, you know, the best. My husband and I didn't make a lot of money. Again, we had to reframe our whole entire thing. My husband started doing Uber. I started doing Uber too. So I did Uber in the morning. He did Uber for the rest of the day. Like we just kind of figured it out at the beginning. But with the little extra that we had, we started paying these people. to lead us. And every book suggestion that they had, we would then buy with my mother-in-law's Amazon account. So we just kind of figured out ways in which we could heal. And we just started devouring all the books, all the content. I started following people on Instagram and on Twitter. And that led to a separation. We separated physically for 6 weeks. My husband left the house for 6 weeks, but we were separated, physically too. Like we weren't having sex. We weren't together for about 16 months because we realized our marriage was all based on Christianity. I married him because I believed God told me. He married me because he believed God told him. Looking back, our trauma told us to marry one another, not God. And so we needed to figure out, do we still want to be married? Is there something worth salvaging here? Do I want to be with you? I didn't want to have sex. Something in my brain which happens often to a lot of women inside of purity culture. Once they get married, they don't want to have sex because we've been told our whole life sex is bad. We are bad. We can't be sexy. Sexy is bad. We are the bad thing. Our body is bad. So I get married. I don't want to have sex. And I betrayed myself over and over and over again and had sex against my own will, which is the definition of rape. And I don't think my husband was raping me. Religion was raping me. And so I get to this place where I'm like, I'm not going to betray myself ever again. And I don't know if I'm ever going to want to have sex. Do you want to be married to me? Knowing that's it. I still will do work. I'll heal from this trauma. I'll do everything I can. So I started doing specific healing for sexual abuse, which is what purity culture is. Sexual abuse.
Yeah, big time.
And those are the conversations that we had to have. And I was having these very deep, uncomfortable conversations with the people that I was paying online and then with my husband. We did go to therapy, and therapy just he kept going. It was good for him. It helped him. It didn't help me. I don't know why. Like traditional therapy.
Yeah.
I just felt like I was talking.
Yeah, but it wasn't going anywhere. Was your husband going through this process of, because obviously he's got a very different experience being white male, American, so obviously he's not got the same things that sparked a lot for you. Was he, but he obviously still got kind of encouraged to leave the church. So what was his, were you guys on a similar path, or were you kind of moving at a much different rate, or what?
Oh no,
was that a major factor as well? Yeah.
I was running away from the church, and him and I were fighting. We were offered a job at another church, and you know how churches are. They have to interview. He was offered a job. I wasn't. He was offered a job. And so the pastors, the lead pastor, his wife, the executive pastor, and his wife invited us to dinner. So we go to dinner, and I start asking the most uncomfortable questions because I needed to know, because it was a 5-year contract. I wasn't about to sign a 5-year contract. It would have killed me.
You've just done 10 years at the last place.
Yeah,
right?
it would have killed me. And I knew it. I knew that I didn't have the emotional capacity to handle that for 5 years. So I asked them, what's your stance on women? They gave me a vague answer. And I knew their stance on women. I knew it. I knew their stance on women. But I asked. And they gave me a vague answer. At one point, one of the pastors said, we subscribe to what the Bible says. What the hell does that mean? I was like, where in what part of the Bible?
Yeah.
And they go,
in the New Testament. What that means, because anyone that uses that phrase, they're only reading the Bible through a really weird lens.
Yeah. But I was being a dick at this point, and I am aware of that. And I said, what part of the Bible? What part of the Bible? And they go, well, in the New Testament. And I was like, do you mean 1 Timothy 2? And they go, yeah, I can't think of it at the top of my head. And I was like, well, it is important at the top of my head because this is my life. Yeah. I am a woman.
This is actually
and
my
I am
one
a
Bible
pastor.
verse in the New Testament. Yeah. This is my Bible verse I have to deal with every day.
And I was like, so it is important to me. Yeah. And they go, no, and that's part of the reason we want you guys, because you are a strong woman. And they give us the runaround. And then I ask questions about LGBTQ community. And then I ask questions about boundaries and about what is their expectation of their employees. And they answered, because the pastor had a baby about 3 months before. And the baby was born on Saturday. And I want you to guess what he was doing on Sunday.
Wow, preaching.
So, yeah, absolutely.
All
he was
about
there
his new
for
child.
all services, 4 chapters, 4 services. He was there for all of them. And I was like, well, I need to know what your boundaries because if that is your expectation, we're out. And they were like, no, 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 no. The baby was early, so we weren't ready. How are you not ready? How early was the baby? So they give us this runaround, right? And my husband, the whole time he's sitting there and like he's nodding and he's agreeing. But at the same time, he's like, shut the hell up. Like, what the hell is the matter with you?
This is
what
our
is the
paycheck.
Matter with you? Yes, yes. And I get it. He feels, because he's been indoctrinated to believe he's supposed to be the breadwinner. Right. It's his responsibility. He's like, I'm trying here and you are putting blocks in front of me. He's like, my entire resume says pastor. What the hell do you want me to do? So it was hard for him, and he defended the pastor. I would tell him like, what he said is just so manipulative. And he'll be like, well, you need to see it from his point of view. And so we'd fight, we'd just have these fights. And he still wanted to subscribe to the very patriarchal parenting. My kids have to obey me, controlling parenting. And I didn't anymore. Like, it didn't make sense. So I told him one day, I stood between him and my oldest daughter. And I said, listen, I know that we've been told that I shouldn't question your authority because I'm going to harm your relationship with her. But all I keep thinking is the many times that my dad didn't say anything to my mom and how he betrayed me. So I'm not going to do that to my daughter. Every time you talk to her that way, I will stand between you and her, and you and I are going to have to fight. And so we fought and fought and fought. And at one point, I really thought, this guy's going to leave me, and he would be right to. We were just so far from one another. Because also he had to let go of Christianity. And for me, I became a Christian. My parents were kind of Catholic, but not super serious about it. And then my dad became a Christian, and then we all became Christians. But for him, he's a 10-generation Christians. They are proud of these. Like, they tell you when you get into this family, they're like, oh, we're 10-generation Christians. We're pastors. We're ministers. We're missionaries. Like, one of his aunts started a missionary orphanage in Bali. The other one is a missionary in Turkey. Like, this is who they are. And here I come and I go, hey, you are all white supremacists and I need you to destroy these. I mean, I didn't say that, but that's kind of what I was saying, because white supremacy is not the KKK, I was upholding white supremacy too. So it was hard. And I really thought we were going to lose each other here. We're going to lose each other. For 16 months, it was miserable. We didn't like each other. I wanted him to go to work in the mornings, and then he'd come home and we'd have talks, and it was hard, and he'd walk away. But he was deeply committed to healing too. He didn't want to continue to be he also has codependency. We all do. So he wanted to heal too. So he started doing the work of healing, and so did I. And he started meeting me, and it was a lot of work for both of us, to try to meet each other. Like, help me understand what you're saying here. So when I started talking about privilege, he looked at me. I grew up very privileged in Colombia. My mom particularly had money, and she paid for my schooling. I was 17 years old and she gave me a brand new car. My vacations were in Miami. That's where I spent every summer. So, and to me, that was normal. It's not normal for Colombians to do that. It's not normal at all. I went to a private school where one of my classmates was the son of the president. A lot of ministers, their kids were in school with me. So that was my reality. That's how I grew up. And then my husband comes from a small town. His dad was a school principal from the public school of the small town in Washington State, next to Canada. Not a lot of wealth privilege, just middle class white people. So I start talking to him about privilege, and he goes, what in the world are you speaking about?
Yeah, how dare you?
Anybody, yes. If anybody in this relationship has privilege, it's you, not me. Yeah. Not at all. Like, I've had to pay for everything I've ever gotten. I've had to earn it. So we have these conversations, and we start reading together and learning together and reading all these books, anti-racism books and anti-bias work together. And it was hard for him to grapple with, oh my gosh, I wasn't even aware. I wasn't aware. And one of the things I had to tell him is, look, if you and I pick a church, any church, pick one church at random, what are the probabilities that if you and I go and apply for a job there, that they give you an interview and that they give me an interview? Who's more, I have more education than him.
Right. I was actually going to ask that, because you've got a master's, right?
Yeah. So I have more education than you, but who gets a second interview? and whose resume gets tossed by 80% of churches just because of my gender, and then because of the fact that I'm Colombian. You know, how many times have we gotten stopped at airports in the world, around the world? How many times have I gotten stopped? So many times. He was shocked when he started traveling with me, and he's like, why do you get stopped everywhere? I'm like, because my passport is Colombian. That's it. That's the only reason I get stopped. I was asked to get an x-ray of my abdomen at one point.
Wow.
In one of the airports. And he was shocked. He was like, this has to be illegal. And I was like, I have two options: to say no and they don't get me on the plane, or to say yes. So what do you want me to do? And he was like, well, it's wrong. And I was like, I understand that. I don't have options. This has been my life.
Time, man.
And for him, it was just these like outrageous. And I'm like, but you've never had to live that reality. I have. This is not new for me. They would poke my luggage all the time, where they would damage some of my clothing. And who am I going to fight? Yeah. And he was like, this is just not okay. I'm like, that's your privilege that you don't think that's okay. 60% of the world that travels, we have to deal with that, you know? People that wear, you know, sick folk that have to wear the, I forgot the name. How do you think they get treated at airports? Yeah. You know, women that wear the hijabi, how do you think they get treated at airports? And so we start talking about privilege, and we start talking about our privilege that we hold, and then the oppressed kind of like identities that we hold. And he goes, I don't have oppressed identities, aside from the fact that I'm not rich, but compared to the universe, like compared to all 7 million of us, I am rich. Yeah. It's true. You don't have a lot of oppressed identities. And so we start having these conversations, and it's hard. And for a moment I thought we're going to lose each other. There's no way we're going to move forward, but we have. And I tell him, I think that we're still married because you loved me more than you loved Jesus. And he did. He loved me more than he loved Jesus. Yeah. You know, because he had to lose the Jesus he had been given. He had to lose a lot of his identity because he was determined on not losing me. And not losing me meant he had to grapple with all of this, you know? Yeah. So
gosh, that must have been a very, very tough process.
I'm sure. I mean, it was tough for me in my own ways, but I'm sure it was very, very tough for him. I mean, and this isn't over, you know, like his family struggles a lot more with my work particularly, because he's not very vocal. I mean, not online. He's not very vocal. His family struggles with everything I say, and he has to have conversations with them. And he knows it's costing him relationship with his family. My family's different. They are like, are you happy? Yeah, cool. So, and I knew that all along. I knew it wouldn't cost me my family. It would never cost me my family. He knew it could.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt the same, you know, because again, doing public ministry, like I've never had any debts about my family. My family are like very, very, very Christian, a bit of a spectrum on what that looks like, but like always just been like, dude, as long as you're doing you're happy, you're healthy, we're happy. But I know for my wife's family, like they're slightly different. They're very chill as well, actually, on the whole. But it's things like, oh, my friends have had my entire life suddenly going, we're just going to take a few steps back and not talk anymore. Or churches I've been associated with going, we really liked having you around, and we didn't even mind you being a little bit like outspoken occasionally about some sort of weird thing that you go, well, actually, it's not really like that. Or maybe like, what about this? You could do that, but we don't like that. Other people, you know, I spoke in over 400 churches in 1 year on my busiest year when I was traveling. It was insane. So, I mean, I was traveling and speaking everywhere constantly. And like overnight, just by changing and being a little bit more open or focusing on a few more different things, I knew overnight things would dry up. And it did. You know, I now get no invitations to churches, maybe a handful a year, but I do like small groups in homes and stuff now, because that's not a thing when you speak about these things. And you weigh it up, you know the sacrifices.
Yeah, you know, the one that I knew, I knew that if I said these, I knew it was the first one. It was over. Like my career as I knew it was over. Was the moment I became LGBTQ affirming.
Oh gosh, that's just.
I was like, that's it. I know that if I go ahead and say. Gay people can get married, just that. And that's not what I said. I said transphobia is a sin, and I speak a lot about transphobia being a sin and Islamophobia being a sin and all this. So I said transphobia is a sin, which was still kind of like a safe way.
Yeah. Oh, that's very.
But
reserved.
I knew, because transphobia is a sin that should not even be, you know, whatever sin is. But I knew I was crossing this line
Yeah.
where all of my contacts, all of the people from my life, all of my career was burned underneath this.
Yeah.
And it's back to that conversation, but who would I be protecting? The powerful, meaning me and everybody else, or the marginalized, meaning the LGBTQ community? You know, who would feel safe now in my presence? The marginalized. So I'll burn it. I'll burn it all.
Well, that's the thing I've always said, like, so people ask me like, well, Phil, why do you do this? Like, because you were doing really well in that world and you were fine and you could operate in that world. And a part of it was, I actually didn't really mind because I was helping people take steps out of it anyway. So I feel it's a very important role for some people to be in that place to help, to be a middleman. I think people like Richard Rohr are amazing at that. You know, they live in that bubble, but they are not in that bubble. They are like, you know, a whole nother place dimensionally. I don't know, but they're helping people make that transition. So I think that's good and important. But for me, I was like, look, at the end of the day, I look at, you know, 99% of the people out there, shit hits the fan, they need support, they need help, they need whatever. There's pastors for days for them, forever. Endless and endless pastors. You look at people that are deconstructing, you look at people that are in marginalized groups, you know, whatever that might be, whatever that might look like, very few people to turn to. They go, gosh, I could really need, you know, someone that is, you know, gay or trans or something in my city, which is, you know, in Europe, pretty progressive place. If they were to have some sort of crisis and maybe they don't have much faith and they go, oh, I grew up Christian, I'd really like to try and get plugged into a community or speak to a pastor and have them support me. They type into a computer, gay-friendly church, Manchester, you know, in the city I live in. You know, the first 5 results of that are churches that and they've all paid to hit on that search results. All of them are not affirming. Now, they'll all not say they're not affirming, but they're immediately walking into a trap. And so for me, I'm like, how do I navigate? I need to be I need to be one of the people, like at least there's one more person in the city that they might come across, you know, and I'm the same online.
Absolutely.
At least there's one more person online. There's more and more people online every day. It's exciting. But this is the fastest growing movement of Christianity. If you can beam of the 2,700 people every day leaving the church,
I know.
80% of them are still professing to have some sort of faith. And so this is a huge movement of like 2,000 people a day leaving church and going, okay, but where is my community and who's pastoring me?
I know.
And I think,
and the thing is, and who's done it? Like, how do I know I'm going to be okay? I need to know I'm going to be okay because it doesn't feel, And the thing is, we look at them and we say, no, there is not. However, you're going to be fine. Like, breathe easy, and you don't have to do this alone. That's what I say to people. And I'm very, very cautious of not communicating myself in such a way that I look like an expert, because there is no expert on this. There is no expert on deconstruction. And that is white supremacy, you know, deep within. The idea of I'm the expert, look at me. Well, I'm not the expert. I'm just somebody that's done deconstruction and that is doing decolonizing work and decolonizing faith. And perhaps some of my journey may serve you as a tool, but I'm not. The only expert is you. The only expert on your journey, on your life, on your spirituality, it's you. You just need some tools that some of us can give you. Like I needed tools. I need tools from a whole bunch of people from different corners of the world, because of Christianity and how we've been wired. We are desperately looking for the expert. Just desperately. And it's hard to just tell people, you don't want me to be your expert.
No,
you don't want me to be your expert.
I fight that do you know, like the amount of times people message me and just want me to be their new pastor? They're like, you know, I've got this question, I've got this decision to make, I've got this whatever, give me, oh gosh. And the truth is, on some level, my ego likes that. Absolutely. I'd love to be your like hero, you know, or whatever. I'd love to be the expert. I'd love to everyone to look at Phil and go, wow, look at this guy. We all love that. And I'm working on that shit within me, trying to deal with that.
Right.
But like, it's just a proof of this like endemic element of Christianity that is, we are built for the hierarchy. We are built to go, who's in charge here? Who's going to show me the way? Who's going to tell me, dictate my steps, tell me the path that I need? Even though nobody, like you said, nobody knows you better than you. You know the path. Like,
and you know what's wild?
Questions would do better.
Jesus did that. You know, he kept saying people would come with questions, and he give them questions.
Yeah. He only answers 2 questions in all 4
Right.
gospels.
And he is hinting all the time at go within. You have the
Yeah.
answers. Go within. Go within. He tells me, what do you want, essentially? You know, I when people talk to me now, before when I was a pastor, I was very good at giving answers. They were probably horrible answers. But now people ask me questions and they go, what do you want? So people never even ask, what do I really want? We have not been wired and conditioned from childhood to be aware of what we want. You know, we've been conditioned and wired to do the right thing. But sometimes what we want doesn't look like the right thing.
No.
Yet it is what we should do, you know? Because sometimes what we want, for instance, I ask people, I'm talking to a friend of mine and she's walking through a lot of hard stuff in her marriage. And I tell her, like, what do you want? Do you want a divorce? Is that what you want? Because if you want a divorce, get a divorce. Or if you don't know what you want, voice that. I don't know what I want. But if you are staying in this marriage because you've been told that's the right thing, you're betraying yourself, you know? So we've been having all these conversations about, like, and that's what being a safe person means. Being able to, people come to you and you don't have answers for them, but you're helping them to discern what it is that they want by asking the questions that they are too afraid to ask themselves. Because that's the only thing. We're so afraid of asking these questions. We're so afraid to admit that sometimes what we want is not, it's uncertainty, and we're afraid of it. So this desire to have answers and this desire to have experts and this desire of hierarchy stands in opposition of everything Jesus did. You know, they keep asking him, which is the greatest of all of us? And he keeps saying, you guys, come on now. There's no greatest. The greatest of you is the one that serves, the one that loves the best, the one that, but all the way to the Last Supper. So who's the greatest? Good Lord, guys, come on. You know, and he keeps challenging, and he goes, you all think I'm the greatest, so I'm going to go ahead and wash your feet and see if you get it. That it's not about being the greatest in the eyes of everybody else, but about being true to who you are, about being faithful to the person that you were created to be. And so we talk about all of these things about Jesus, about loving Jesus and following Jesus. Yet we look, and it's not what we're living out. It's not how we're framing our lives. It's not how we're framing our societies even. No. And the opposite, we are holding tight to everything Jesus was like, we shouldn't do that anymore, perhaps. You know, we should be willing to lay down our privilege. We should be willing to pick up our cross. We should be, and we should be propping up the other. We should be lifting up the other and not being so concerned with lift me up. You know, so I look at that and the hierarchy. That's why I don't go to church, by the way, hierarchies, because I have yet to find a church where hierarchies don't exist. And so long as there are hierarchies, somebody's being stepped on. They might not be aware of it, but somebody's being stepped on. So and that's challenging, because that has changed the way in which I talk to my children. The way in which I see the dynamics of my family, the way in which I see the dynamics in the world, the way in which I do the work that I do. Because I don't want to be on top of anybody. I don't want hierarchies. I want to build a community in my life, a family, where we collaborate with one another. There is no competition, but there is collaboration.
And I think that creates responsibility, right? So at the end of the day, that's what creates the stuff that makes you do the work, right? So when someone comes to me and asks for advice and I go, well, what do you think? You know, like they go, oh crap, I haven't actually thought of that. Or I haven't asked myself that, or, you know, like it's crazy. But like when we go from one system of hierarchy to another, whether that person is in any way, shape or form wanting to control, abuse, you know, manipulate, take advantage, any of these things, they will inherently do it. You know, so earlier this week, I was talking to someone, just a beautiful person that had come from a background of like some different abuse and all sorts of different stuff. And then they had basically gone through some rehabilitation program and then started working for that group. But what's interesting is they were trapped in this system. They've been trapped in it for years now, and they couldn't get out. And basically they had gone from one system of abuse straight into another. And it wasn't that the person that they were now working for, or the organization or system were inherently trying to abuse people, to control people, to manipulate people. But the problem is when you grow up your whole life trying to please your authority figure, expecting other people to live your life for you or help you or whatever, all these different elements, and you go straight into another situation, you immediately are going, oh, look, another person that will tell me what to do, another person I can try and please. Have you watched, my wife encouraged me to check out a documentary on Netflix called Cheer. And dude, you got to watch this documentary. It's so good. It's terrible, but it's amazing. It's a documentary about, it's not terrible actually, but it's this documentary about cheerleading and the best cheerleading.
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen the pictures, but I'm not interested in cheerleading, but.
Dude, me neither. So, but now I am. I'm like, yes. But like, it's fascinating watching these people break their bodies doing this. I had no idea the degree of what's involved. Wild. You know, I've seen it go into like a basketball game or a football game, but that's like not cheerleading. That's not even like near competition level cheerleading. So it turns out like, that's actually like low tier, easy stuff. What they do for the competitions. So at high school, end of high school, beginning of college, that's the big stuff. Because after that, you've broke your body beyond repair anyway.
Yeah, you can't do anything else.
But so one of the girls had come from this abusive background. She had no parents to speak of. Her mother had abandoned her. Her dad abandoned her first, and then her mother abandoned her after, and she was living with her grandparents. It was just really tough. She was living in a trailer, and then her brother that she lived with abandoned her as soon as he turned 18. And she's just like, oh my gosh, she is crying out for someone to love her. And then she goes into this system where like they're in this family and everyone's coming together and we're all together, and she's suddenly got this family. But the mom figure, the leader of the children, she is a lovely, amazing woman, but she is benefiting hard from the fact that this woman, this young girl, wants to please mom.
Right.
So bad. Like literally the girl at one point, she's gone to the hospital. There's no spoilers in this or anything, don't worry. But she goes to the hospital and they're like, you are taking so many beats when they throw you up in the air and they catch you. You're taking so many hits on your ribs that we think they're fracturing and splintering. And honestly, if you keep doing this, there's a real high chance of a splinter and stab you in the lungs and kill you on the spot.
You're done. Yeah.
You're just done. Your organs stabbed. You're just shish kebab and dead. And she goes back to the practice and she's like, what should I do? She asks the woman and she's like, if you think you can do it, I believe in you. I believe if you think you can do it, if you think you're strong enough, if you think you're that great, you can do it. And I'm like, she doesn't mean badly. And she hasn't heard you're going to die. So that she's not like being irresponsible in that sense of she has the information of that. But this kid is going to go, I want to please mom. And it just shows, it's a beautiful example of this thing of like, this girl has been told you're very likely to die if you keep doing this.
It doesn't matter.
But it doesn't matter. I'm so ingrained and I'm in a system which is structured that mom is at the top. Now, it's not my mom.
And because they are so, it's so much fear. You're so afraid. It's what I was telling you. I switched my mom for my pastor. And I knew I'm going to keep doing this because my husband and I started, like, we looked at other churches, we looked at other denominations, we looked at everything. We looked at home churches. We traveled to San Francisco to see a movement of home churches that was there, that was, seemingly working. And I just kept seeing cycles of abuse and hierarchies. And so long as Christianity believes that they are the superior faith, they are partnering up with white supremacy.
Yeah. It's
the good faith for you. That does not mean is the superior faith for all, and making that differentiation. But so long as soon as somebody believes, oh, everybody should be Christian, that's what they need, you are marrying Christianity with white supremacy. And it comes from trauma. This wanting to homogenize, well, that's a hard word to say. The world is this, it's just this trauma that if we all of us think the same, then we'll all protect one another. No, not really. We need diversity. We need everybody to be able to express themselves however they feel they should express themselves. What works in America most certainly doesn't work in Colombia, in the UK, or in China.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to respect people wherever they are at. But yeah, this idea that it's an oppressive system so long as we believe it's the right system, but the whole thing with cheer, you are describing exactly what I was doing with my pastor. It's
Yeah.
the
Oh,
exact same thing.
I've done it as well, like 100%. I know that.
Yeah,
Like
because
my
we all
parents were
have
slightly
that.
detached, you know, and I really vied
Right.
for their, and the way I got my parents' love generally was by doing something for them, because they didn't show much affection. They didn't physical touch or words of affirmation. So it was like, if I would go buy my mom a little gift or something because we were poor, and she would be like, oh, it's so great. Or if I would
You,
go and do the vacuuming, you know, hoover
yeah,
up or whatever, and she'd be like, oh, thank you so much. And so immediately I go into a church environment and I'm going, Pastor, what can I do for
you're
you? Or
perfect for them.
Pastor, even though you make 8 times more than all of us, I've bought you a nice little hamper to say
I
thank
know.
you. And you know, it's like, and that's great. It's nice to do, but not out of what I was doing it. You know,
No,
like that
it's
was some
the hidden
unhealthy stuff. You
motivations,
know.
right? Like what
Hmm.
we were talking about, the hidden motivations underneath. And
Yeah.
I have this theory that the love languages, you know, the love languages that are so very
Yes.
famous inside, I think they are trauma coping.
Mm.
Not so much love languages, but trauma coping, you know, like ways in which I'm coping with my trauma so that I can appease my feelings and not have to deal with abandonment and not have to deal with rejection and not have to deal with insecurities.
I could see that.
So we go into marriage seminars, for instance, and they go like, well, you need to know your wife's love language and then love her that way. What is that communicating? You need to help her cope with how she feels insecure about your behavior so that she stops feeling insecure, when in reality I shouldn't feel insecure. If he wants to leave, he can go. You know, like, that's it. Like, my insecurities should not be the reason which we interact with one another.
Yeah.
Like, I know how he feels. People will tell me all the time, because my husband's love language, like most men, because of toxic masculinity, is touch. And I don't like hugs. I already established that at the beginning. I'm not a hugging, you know, our
Yeah.
society, Colombia, Bogota, people from Bogota, where I grew up, we don't touch people.
Okay.
And so I marry this guy, and he's like, I need touch. I'm like, that feels awkward to me. And this whole time, every time we would go to like counselors or have pastoral counseling, it was like, Joe, you just need to touch. But that's not natural for me. And why is he wanting, like, why does he need me to touch him to feel loved? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Now when I touch him, and I do touch him a lot, it's because I want to, not because I feel coerced to, because his love language is that. So I have to appease his love language. You know, no, I don't have to. I don't. He should be secure enough in himself that whether I touch him or don't touch him, he's like, she loves me. I know she loves me. And the same, you know, my love language supposedly is words of affirmation, which is, it's just my insecurity. I needed people to validate me. I needed validation to know that I still belong. So he was like trying, but that's not natural for him. Words are not his thing. He's not very good at that. He's just not what he did. So it was the same. He was forcing himself to say the right thing to appease my own insecurities. Well, does any of that communicate healing or healthy or wholesomeness? No, it's just cycles of trauma, and we are encouraging each other's trauma to make sure that I'm not triggering you and you're not triggering me. When in reality, if I deal with my trauma and you deal with yours, we won't trigger each other. We will be able to have healthy attachment to each other, you know?
Yeah. I'd love to see some studies on that, of like, if there was some way we could isolate how people grew up and how they received love, how they didn't receive love, and what that translates today. Because it's well documented that what people's love languages change based on major life shifts, right? So you go from I don't have any kids and my love language is words of affirmation. I have kids, you know what? I don't care. Just do some dishes and help with this and help with that. Right?
Service.
Whatever.
That's how I feel loved.
And so it shifts based on different areas where you're exhausted, tired, you maybe feel insecure, different things. I can totally see that words of affirmation one that makes you laugh, because I used to be very like that. And I can retrospectively look at it and go, oh God, that's just my insecurities. I was very insecure and I needed some affirmation. It's really fascinating, really interesting.
I think it's interesting too, and this is just my theory, but there is no backup to this. It's just me observing.
But this depth of trauma. So we should probably wrap up, because we've been going for about 2 hours, and I want to make sure you get back to your family.
I don't know where they are, but
oh, they've not come back. Well, that's good.
I don't know if they came back. They might have. They are really quiet. So
okay, but I'm really intrigued. So one of the big things I'd love to make sure people can do is connect with you afterwards. But before I talk about that, talk to me about some resources that people can look into, because it feels like an underpinning for a lot of what we've talked about here is is white supremacy, decolonization, and then trauma as a whole.
Yeah.
What are a couple of great resources that people can kind of grab a hold of or go to, or what was really helpful for you in kind of starting that journey as far as educating yourself?
I think there is so much out there, and it can feel so deeply overwhelming to be met with all of this information out there, all these podcasts and all these books and all these. So perhaps the first thing I would suggest is just take it slow, and don't be overwhelmed. I have a list of resources for decolonizing, deconstruction, and trauma, and also LGBTQ and Christianity on the link on my bio. You can, it's literally
Perfect.
just a Word document with
I've seen it, so
documents.
I'll put that in your link tree bio.
But I know that people read that and feel so overwhelmed. So what I encourage people to start with is just following the Instagram and Twitter accounts that are on those resource lists and watching slowly, reading, just kind of sitting for months. I'm talking like at least 3 months, just sitting and reading that content. And as you read, you can start seeing like, oh, these books or these podcasts would probably be more beneficial for me than these others. And then you're not spending a whole bunch of money or a whole bunch of time that would be better spent, elsewhere. Because I had a lot of people give me a lot of book resources at the beginning, and they weren't all that helpful because they just didn't apply to the season of the life. And I was like, okay, well, that was interesting. And it was helpful to some degree, but if I would have just sat down to listen a little longer, then I would have saved some money. Well, some of my mother-in-law's money on books. She's the one that buys me all the books. So, my recommendation is always start with following the Twitter and the Instagram accounts and just kind of watching,
see what grabs you, and then kind of follow that,
and be like, oh my gosh, this is definitely something I need to look into, and that would be helpful and beneficial for me.
And grabs you, when I say that as well, probably isn't a positive feeling sometimes as well. It'll be like, oh, like, dang, this, I feel defensive. I feel
exactly
angered, all sorts of different emotions that will be positive and negative, I imagine. Because I know for me, I follow different accounts because I'm very aware of whatever my backgrounds are, that my issues of racism, any kind of xenophobia, all sorts of different things that are going on. And I follow different accounts because of that. And I know that some of them I get really like, I'm like, that's just unfair. Why, how dare you? Like, or whatever. And then I'm like, okay, let me think this through. As a white person,
right?
Is it unfair? Like, I mean, and just thinking through like, oh, where are they coming from as a person from a totally different background? And so it actually does, it requires just following accounts can be hard work as well. So, you might throw a book across the room, but like just following an account, it's going to be triggering you nonstop because,
and listen,
this is ingrained.
I unfollowed people. Yeah. And at the beginning, I unfollowed people because I was so angry at them. I was like, how dare you? He doesn't get it. He doesn't. There is this guy, his name is like, his at is Chaka Bars. And some of the things that he'd say, he talks a lot about racism and a lot about blackness in general. And I was like, ugh, he doesn't get it. He just doesn't get it. So I unfollowed him like 4 times. And then I refollowed him. And now I love him. Now I love everything he says. And I like, not everything. He says some things I'm like, I don't know about that. But, it doesn't trigger me anymore. Yeah. So, and it was the same with like women like Rachel Cargle, Lisa Renee Hall, Layla Saad, all of these women that are talking about racism. And I would feel very defensive. And then I would see the way that they respond as a very marginalized community, as a Black woman in the world. They don't owe us niceness, So I would see the way in which they would reply to white women challenging them. And I'd be like, well, that was rude. And then I'd be like, oh, they don't owe me niceness. They don't owe any of us niceness. And learning that I do expect niceness from people sometimes. Yeah. And so, yes, you will feel so uncomfortable, but discomfort is not something we run from anymore. It's something we sit with. Kind of like pain. Really, we were talking about pain leading us to the healing. Yeah. Discomfort leads us to. Discomfort is something we lean into and not react to anymore. But it's like, okay, why am I so uncomfortable? Like nothing should make me so uncomfortable. Why am I so uncomfortable by this? Clearly it's putting the finger on something that I should definitely look at.
That's so good. Awesome. So that's some, so you say you've got Instagram and Twitter accounts that talk about the race stuff, the colonization, and trauma stuff. Is there some accounts on there for that as well?
I do. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay.
I'm working on a parenting one in case people are interested. So it should be up in about a week to talk about, how to do parenting, decolonized and deconstructed parenting.
Right.
So if you just keep checking, I update them
Perfect.
often.
I'll so if you're watching this or listening to this, in the show notes, I'll put a link to Joe's
My link tree.
Link tree that will then have all the resources and stuff. I looked through that. I looked through it this morning when I was like, oh, I just need to like check out some more stuff because I've only really lived on your Instagram. I've not gone beyond that. And I was like, dude, this is awesome. There's loads of stuff in here.
There is.
So it's really
you know,
great
people
resource.
would ask me all the time. People would ask me, I was like, I should just make a document and then.
Yeah, dude, I need to do that. I just tell people, I just write it all out every time.
Make a document.
Not wise. I should do that. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Honestly, this has been fantastic. And I'd love to have you on again at some point as well, because I feel like we scraped surfaces that we could have gone so deep in so many different areas. And so, this has been really, really great.
Same. Thank you so much. Thank you for sacrificing some of your sleep, actually, for having this conversation.
It's fine. I enjoy staying up late anyways.
Good. Well, I always tell white people that are willing to have conversations with me that I'm really grateful because it's not a comfortable conversation for white people. So I'm grateful for white people that are not only willing to listen, but also willing to uplift it, to kind of like put it out there. And so I appreciate your willingness to do both of those things. That's a way of using your privilege.
It's a really, so I'm not even gonna let you go. This is something I struggle with because I'm torn because I've read kind of two kind of dynamics of that as well that I'd love to just get your input on. Like there's an element of giving a voice to people that are marginalized, that are minorities, that have been victims of privilege and different things like that. But there's another element as well of like, I'm giving a voice. So in a sense, I'm still in this privileged, better, whatever place. Does that make sense? And
yeah, it does.
Do you have thoughts on how to find a balance in that as well? Or even how do you communicate? Because I've had people say that to me as well. I've had a lot of pushback on me saying, hey, today I want to just share a whole bunch of different things from the LGBTQ plus community. Why don't you share, put in this box something that you'd like to share, and I'm going to post them all on my story and share 20, 30 stories today. I had people contact me, a couple people, most people loved it. A couple people were going, look at you, you're like cis and you think you have this platform, and look at you, look, what a savior, giving us a platform to speak. And I was like, I didn't mean anything, but I probably have done something on some level wrong. I need to evaluate that and think about that. But at the same time, I'm like, I want to use this platform to have these conversations, and I want to, I don't know. And there's an element as well where white people only listen to white people, right? There's an element where straight 100%. People only listen to a straight person. So if I can go, well, screw you guys, I'm getting someone from Colombia on my show, or screw you guys, I'm getting a gay guy on my show. Now you got to listen to them.
Right.
There seems to be some element where that's got to be beneficial.
I think there's two things. Like you are not giving a voice to the marginalized. You are just highlighting it. We have a voice.
Yes.
We've always had a voice. You're just highlighting it and using your privilege to ensure that it is heard. Because like you said, because of implicit biases, the probability of people wanting to hear you are much higher than the probability of people wanting to hear me. Not because of what I have, anything that I have to say is not valid or valuable, just because they look at your skin and they look at your gender and they look at my skin and they look at my gender. They look at where you were born and where I was born, and their brain tells them he's an expert. She's not. It's just what their brain does. So you take your privilege and say, well, actually, I want you to hear her because I learned something from her, which means we all can. So what you're doing is confronting them with their implicit biases and saying your implicit biases don't apply. Look at how they don't apply. So you're highlighting our voices. You're essentially giving us the mic, if you will. This is something I learned from Black women, because it's this idea that we need to give a voice to the voiceless. Nobody is voiceless. It's just that some have been hoarding the mic. So what you're doing, and what I do too, is I just pass the mic. I've had the mic as a cisgender heterosexual woman. I've had the mic. So I pass it down. As a documented immigrant, I pass the mic. I had a great interview and conversation with the daughter of an undocumented man here in San Diego, and her story and her experience with immigration. Because as soon as she says, my dad is an undocumented immigrant, her credibility is gone with most people.
Yeah.
Her credibility is absolutely gone. But I am a documented immigrant. I've done everything. Not for a second was I undocumented in this country illegally. So I have credibility. When people say, well, we want people like you that can do it legally, I say, well, you're going to have to listen to those people too. So we are only highlighting voices that need to be heard, from which we are learning. Because I was one of those people that said, if you want to come, just do it legally. Idiot. Like, without acknowledging my privilege, without acknowledging the fact that I could pay the lawyers, without acknowledging the fact that, you know, I didn't run away from Colombia because I was in danger. I ran away because I didn't want to live next to my mom. That's very different, you know?
Very.
So I'm not giving a voice to the undocumented woman. I am just simply using my platform and using my privilege to demand people listen to her too. And I think that understanding that difference is important, you know, because and like I said, you won't be triggered by some of the things that are said about people of color or about gay people or about undocumented immigrants. They will be. So in a way, you're also putting yourself, if you're going to get any backlash from me speaking about white supremacy, you can handle it. It's different for you. You won't be re-traumatized by it. I will.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's you putting yourself between them and a marginalized person too. Yeah. That's how I view it anyways.
No, that's great. Awesome. On that note, how do they get in touch with you? So your Instagram and Twitter and stuff, is that the best place to follow you?
Definitely. Twitter and Instagram are the places where I am the most active. We have a kind of a hold on our YouTube channel because we've changed a lot and we had a baby unexpectedly. So since it was like, dude, I can't keep doing videos, and we've changed. Yeah, thank you. She was our fourth. We didn't want 4 babies, but here we are, and it's fun. So that's a little bit of a hold, but there is still a lot of videos there and a lot of content. But yeah, Instagram and Twitter are definitely the best ways.
So Instagram, Twitter, same handle?
Same handle. Joe Luehmann, one
Joe
word.
Luehmann. Yeah.
And Luehmann is impossible to like spell.
Luehmann. Sorry.
No. Yeah, it's Luehmann.
Yes.
You'll write it down. It's
I'll
impossible.
put it down in the show notes as well. So it's in the show notes. So Twitter, Instagram, and then YouTube as well. And that's in the show in your
yeah. All of that is on the link on my bio. Yeah.
Awesome. Brilliant. So I encourage people to check you out as well, because honestly, I've really enjoyed your Instagram, and I'm going to keep checking out your other resources as well, especially all those links on deconstruction, decolonization, and all that. So yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night and a great weekend.
Yes, you too.